initially we can feel maybe a piece of paper that's a color. We feel a vibration or a sensation or a texture. Like the same paper, if it's yellow versus blue, could feel like a different texture. So we call that intuition, but I think eventually we'll be more refined in calling these things like intuitive feeling, intuitive sensing, intuitive smelling, intuitive hearing, where the aunties, the uncles, the older teenage siblings, the moms and dads that are co-facilitating our children's program, the moms and dads are putting on the blindfold and they're like, I thought it was supposed to take days or weeks or months, but the first time I put it on, I started having some experiences already. And with that meditation of remembering the true essence of who we are and dropping all the false identities that we don't need to hang on to anymore, the next morning, my fascia just all opened up. So how much of the gunk that we're holding in our fascia requires a lot of physical working with, and how much of it can be something that we can work with maybe upstream from the physical reality and then come back through. I still needed to do some yoga stretches and a little bit of self-massage to work out the last few percent of it. But it just all locked into place in this beautiful way from the experience of remembering our true essence.
Today we're sitting down with Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, a founder of the Luminous Education Movement, a Harvard-trained mathematician, doctor of Chinese medicine, and author of Super Wellness, Becoming Your Own Best Healer. After years of clinical practice, she went through a series of profound awakenings in meditation and retreat that opened her into the deeper frontiers of perception, subtle energy, and consciousness. Now, Dr. Edith, I've invited you here. I saw you at Confluence, and what your boys did, what your students did in front of me wasn't just remarkable, but it was very easy to remember. I've studied telepathy for quite some time as a golfer, fascinated in my own direction with it. And with my audience, I often talk about the muscles outside of the body, this awareness that we can feel when we train the subtle and the nuanced. My approach is very physiological forward. We're using the body as an instrument to tune ourselves to these subtle perceptions. And I kind of see intuition as our ability to feel the winds of this ether plane or this electromagnetic field and perceive the tensions however our body instrument talks to us. But I am so curious to know, how would you define intuition?
Wow, we're going to just get right into it. I love it. I love your definition of intuition. To me, intuition is actually natural, normal senses that all human beings have that we simply haven't cultivated fully in this world. Pure physical materialist paradigm of physiology and of human biology, maybe by looking at life from that pure physical materialist paradigm, we miss out on all the even more expansive possibilities that are available in this human experience. And so in the topic of intuition opens a whole vast set of conversations actually about what a human being actually is. Is it just this meat suit, or is there something more? And so if we can just dive right into it, because with our blindfold perception training, we call it blindfold vision training. But actually what happens when the children, and now we're working with adults too, put on a blindfold, when you shut down this physical eye senses, the other senses get heightened. I just came back from my 11-day darkroom retreat, so that's a really fresh experience. If your physical eyes aren't seeing, then these extra sensory perceptions of, even our physical senses of hearing and smell and taste and touch gets heightened. And then the subtler realms of those senses also start kicking into gear. And so we start to be able to tap into a more expanded state of smell, a more expanded state of hearing, a more expanded state of, taste and touch and sensing and feeling and knowing. And then perhaps our ability to sense light. We tap into a fuller spectrum of light sensing beyond what is normally the standard norm of what most human beings currently experience. So we often say that the initial experience of blindfold perception training is actually perhaps kicking us into something like a synesthesia, where we start to sense light through our skin, like our face, our temples. There are these acupoints that seem to be able to sense light and translate that light information perhaps into your brain, into visual mapping, right? So we know that this is possible because do you know who Dr. Norman Deutsch is?
I'm not familiar with Dr. Deutsch, no.
What is the name of his book? I think it's called The Brain That Changes Itself. So he popularized this device where blind people are able to put on this device that has a camera that they, I think, usually wear on their forehead, and it translated into electrical impulses that they place on a little flat thing that they put on their tongue. And it pulses the image in electrical signals onto their tongue. And these completely blind people are able to translate that into visual image in their brain and climb mountains and play basketball and walk around town and do all the stuff as if they are seeing with eyes, except it's the visual experience in their brain. So they call this a sensory substitution device. What we're finding is that in our trainings, initially we can feel maybe a piece of paper that's a color. We feel a vibration or a sensation or a texture. Like the same paper, if it's yellow versus blue, could feel like a different texture. So we call that intuition, but I think eventually we'll be more refined in calling these things like intuitive feeling, intuitive sensing, intuitive smelling, intuitive hearing. For example, a piece of paper that we shake, it has if you get really, really still, you can train yourself to hear that the color yellow has a different quality of sound to the color red, to the color green, to the color blue. When you shake the exact same cardstock paper, it could sound different. So we call that intuitive hearing. But I think it might just be normal hearing, just an expanded range of subtlety, you know?
And well, the ear can perceive like 1,400 different tones. So like our normal music is only, 72, 77, like, if they're playing all of the octaves. So we have a very underutilized ear. So the fact you're even talking about the change in, I'm curious, is the red cardstock like the lowest of frequencies in a way? The slowest?
Turns out everybody is wired a little bit differently, so we can calibrate this. This is Dahlia, who is our collaborator for our adult training. So she's been teaching me some of these subtle methods with our adult training. We slow it down and we actually train and calibrate to the different colors through sounds. We slow it down one thing at a time. Just learn how to smell the colors, learn how to hear the colors, learn how to feel the colors, the vibratory sensing of the colors. And then we transition into the visual sensing of the light, like it becomes a visual experience. So we see it intuitively also. But like all these different senses, they're available to all of us. It's just that it atrophied. We didn't use it. So we're bringing it back up. And with the children, they kick into these senses pretty quickly, so it's like eventually all these senses map into your brain into visual imagery that we call mind sight, or blindfold vision, or extraocular vision. All these different senses, I think the world is calling it intuition, but in the future, we'll have much more refined, mature languaging to talk about the subtle nuances of all of these senses and how they actually all create like stepping stones or scaffolding to a holistic, more expanded awareness of the information that is available to all of us all the time.
So you're talking about expanding perception by training. Yes. And then using that expansion in perception. So like intuition's just this big box that we've thrown all of these perceptions into. And these perceptions are like windows in the body that we can either open or close. At what age do you feel like the windows are open for our awareness? And like what age do you feel like they start to dull?
That's an interesting question. And I want to be cautious how I answer this question because this is a brilliant community that you've built. And I know that the whatever the age, the infinite possibilities are available to everyone that's listening to this. However, it is easier when we're younger. So with our children's program, we started accepting children 5 to 11 in the beginning. Then we started doing 5 to 12. Then we started doing 5 to, now we are successfully working with 5 to 14-year-olds. And now we have an adult program. So I'm careful how I answer this question because I think we might be hitting the myth monkey effect pretty quickly right now, where what used to take a really long time for us to access, the field of consciousness is just supportive of it, where the aunties, the uncles, the older teenage siblings, the moms and dads that are co-facilitating our children's program, you know, because we get the whole family involved in our children's program. The moms and dads are putting on the blindfold and they're like, I thought it was supposed to take days or weeks or months, but the first time I put it on, I started having some experiences already.
Do you think that's from like a resonant effect?
That seems to be the case because my boy got activated in his blindfold perception 5.5 years ago. So he was 5 years old. He's 10.5 now. And I played with it back then and not much happened. And recently a lot is happening with my own perceptions opening up too. And I think that there's a field effect happening. And with our kids classes, we started offering these consistent rounds of group kids classes about 2 years ago. And every cycle, the children activate and tap into it faster, and their abilities expand deeper and further. And it's the same program. It's a 6-week program where the first week and the 6th week, we coach the parents and the families. The core 4 weeks, we specifically are working with the children. So it's the same duration of time, but the results are consistently expanding deeper and further with each and every round. So I think we're doing something with the field effect that's quickening the process for everybody.
Okay. I really like that.
So I don't want to avoid your question. I do want to say that from 0 to 7, the children are in such a natural, magical state that they just fall right into it so easily. The reason we work with kids age 5 plus and not age 3 or 4, though, is because age 5 is probably around the time when they can, you know, sit still and follow the guided exercise and instructions to play the games with us. Age 4, they often would put on the blindfold and they would squirm and they would go, what is this? This is so silly, and just throw away the blindfold and run off, and they don't want to stay and do the exercises yet. In fact, some of our 5 and 6-year-olds is so amazing because what takes some other kids, especially the older kids, the full cycle of classes to tap into, you know, perceiving in front, to the side, behind their head, maybe under the table or into the other room. We started having some 5-year-olds that kick into that within 10 to 15 minutes, and they won't sit still. We had one case recently. And the mom's like, I paid good money for this class. Please come back. You know, they don't want to quite sit still. And then they play a game and they're upstairs with the walkie-talkie and mom's downstairs. And mom's like, okay, what about that? What color am I holding? What am I holding now? And they, you know, 3, 4, 5 in a row get it correct. And they go, Mom, this is boring. It's so easy. You know, to remote view from upstairs to downstairs. It's like almost like, why do you even need to take a class for this? Is as natural as breathing for me, you know? So we started encountering some kids now where they're almost like, why are you guys even making a big deal out of this that I can see completely blindfolded? Of course we can do that. That's the energy some of the younger kids are bringing now. Whereas the older kids, they really appreciate that this is something so delightful and so special. And they get excited. They're like, yeah, I'm activating a fun superpower, even though it's a superpower all of us have, but it's a process of awakening it. It's so delightful and so special for the older kids to tap into this, you know? So with the older kids, what we appreciate about working with kids that are like 9 to 13 is that they tend to be able to sit still and do these guided meditative practices and tap into the expanded perception. And then they debrief. Like, there's a beautiful conversation about, I was overthinking that one. Now I know what it feels like to be guessing or to be overthinking, to be in my monkey mind state. versus in my intuitive coherent state. So with the older kids, we actually get to unpack, what does that feel like when you're overthinking? And what does it feel like when you have an intuitive hunch? Because sometimes the kids will say in the early couple of classes, they'll say, I know it's something like bluish green, but I don't know quite yet if it's blue or green. Or I know it's yellowish orange. I can feel that it's yellowish orange. And then at some point they go, yes, it's, dark orange, or is neon yellow, or is hot pink, or is aquamarine blue, or is forest green. They know so specifically, and they walk into this precise knowing. So we celebrate when they get it incorrect, and we celebrate when they get it correct, because that's really what this training is about. It's like attuning and calibrating the instrument to correctly identify what is true and what is not true.
So it's almost like you're a music teacher that took math and then translated it to the body to calibrate. Like everything that you just said is how athletes train, just with different skill sets.
Yes.
So you're using the blindfold vision to anchor in this feeling, and then that's the feeling that these kids are learning how to create. So the fact that the young ones are dismissing it like it's so easy, that's exactly the environment you want to create, is it not?
Yeah, and so it's fun that we have mixed ages, because like they inspire each other. The older kids will talk through it a little bit more, and they want a little bit more guided breathing and so on. And the younger kids, they're like, it's so easy, and they hold in the field the possibility that we just drop into this, relax into this in a fun, playful way. And it just is so natural that it inspires the older kids to click into it faster.
That fun, playful state that you keep harping on, I would call theta. Would you agree?
That's the science piece that I'm excited to explore, and it's all just hypothesis at this moment. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is that the children, I've noticed that the children are like in a joyful, relaxed state that seems like alpha. And then they drop into a deeper state of relaxation that you can just sense intuitively, the energy shift into theta. But sometimes they drop into what appears to be a hypnagogic state, like they're almost falling asleep. And in that state, there's super high accuracy rates too. So I think it's just like maybe anything. And also the gamma state, the name of your podcast, where we get them. So at first it's like this slowing the breathing down and slowing it down. And we give them the color and we invite them to take a few deep breaths. And then for some kids, it's just slowing it down. For some kids, it's like, don't think about it. Just the first thing that comes to you. What's the first thing? Let's go. And so we like bypass the thinking mind with them. And then they get it. And then the next color or the next shape, whatever we're working with, perceiving, we kind of like pattern interrupt. So every kid is a little bit different. We go, don't think about it. First thing that comes to you, what it is. First thing. And then they get into this flow, and then we go rapid fire, boom, 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 boom. And we give them the colors or the shapes so fast that the pace is so rapid, there's no chance they're even thinking about it. In that flow, it appears to me, again, just hypothesis, that they might be in a gamma state because they're so rapid fire. They're like in a perpetual download. Like they're not thinking about it. It's like yellow, green, blue, yellow, orange, green, purple, red, like at that kind of pace, it seems like gamma. So I wonder if there is a state here that is a super coherent state where all the brainwaves might be locking into harmonics of each other. Because the byproducts that we're hearing from the families include things like, my child was just dyslexic. For some reason, they put on the blindfold and they read more fluently than without the blindfold. We don't know why. Suddenly, they're not dyslexic when they have the blindfold on. Or their creativity has skyrocketed. Their sports performance has skyrocketed. Their academics, but also their creativity. Many children tell us that when they do art, they love to do art. If they do art with the blindfold on after they've activated their blindfold perception, the art is like more magical, more creative, more beautiful. We've had musician kids tell us that when they play piano with the blindfold on, it's like this flow that takes over, that they're not thinking, and the music just flows right through them. So we've started talking about this work as a kind of super coherent flow state training. So in a way, the blindfold vision isn't even about the blindfold vision. It's kind of like an excuse for us to play some meditative games to tap into this state of being that is super coherent, lock into this super flow state. Whereas a byproduct, we have so many different gifts and blessings that unfold: the creativity, the academics, the sports performance, the inner attunement with what is true and what is right within yourself. So many beautiful gifts that will be for life with these children now.
In my training, I teach a breath rate where we drop our breath rate to 4 breaths a minute with the intention of getting us into gamma when we need it. So like athletes and artists, that state of flow, when adrenaline hits you, you can either become panicked and paralyzed, or you can kind of open up. I call it the electromagnetic frequency, right? Again, just hypothesis. The way that I would describe your work is you're familiarizing the kids with their electromagnetic field and then teaching them to throw it in different rooms and different areas. So creating adaptability and flexibility there. So with my clients, we've been reactivating the fascia. I have a very specific program that opens up numb spots, and we have a protocol for where there was dullness and numbness now is fully alive. And with the combination with the breath rate pattern, a lot of people are coming back online, full grown adults. And it's been interesting because there's a ceiling with my work. They come to me for pain, and then they quickly get out of pain, and then they don't want to practice anymore. And there's a percentage that just stop, and then they just kind of dose my work as they need it. But they don't want to push through that activation of what was numb, like to this next level where we start to become more elastic with our world around us. And I was wondering if you had advice about people who are numb that want to come more even fully back online, but they're not 14. What would you recommend for them? We'll start there. That'll be my first question.
Well, I'm sure with your work, you find that there is something like an 80-20 rule. There is a certain set of practices that works for most people most of the time. And then that last little bit is highly individualized. And everybody unlocks and opens up and awakens in their perfect way at their own perfect pace. So I would suggest everybody to just drop into stillness and listen, allow that motivation to be guided from the inside out instead of from the outside in. So many of us who have, devoted decades of our life, maybe multiple lifetimes, to put together these really efficient and high potency programs, we're here to basically get you to your 80%. That last little bit, that has to be internally driven, internally motivated. And that is a highly personal journey for everybody. The things that I find really helpful, and it's almost sounds trite, but it's those simple lifestyle practices that all stack together. And I talk about this in my first book, Super Wellness. Simple things like making sure you get sunshine during the day and complete darkness at night, because that calibrates your physiology in ways that we're just beginning to understand. What happens in the darkness when you're saturated with your melatonin and you kick into more of a DMT production state? What happens during the full spectrum sunlight when the waters that is flowing through your fascia is getting activated by the full spectrum natural light, and there's more fourth phase water activity that enhances the electrical flow? And also, per Veda Austin's work, the water that's flowing through our fascia, in our cerebral spinal fluid, and on these specific acupoints, there's likely pictographic information that can be imbued into the waters that can be translated perhaps by our brain into visual information to actually kick into more subtle realms of these sensibilities and sensitivities. So there's a lot of just light and darkness can make a huge difference in getting the circuitry flowing even more deeply. And for me, intermittent fasting, or, this is very personalized also, prolonged fasting in a very safe and supportive way, When I was in darkroom, I fasted all throughout the time. We don't call it fasting because Jasmine, she calls it source feeding. So we're not eating physical food, but we're tapping into a deeper flow of nourishment by directly connecting with source and having the direct experience of nourishment from the inside out in a meditative state. So when we're not busy digesting lots of heavy duty foods, the enzymes in our body can go to work to break down old like gunk and adhesion and scar tissues that's like gunking up and gluing together our fascial layers. So I'm sure that many of your audience members have experienced either intermittent fasting or significant days of water fasting, for example. And that's a very common experience where people feel like, well, my fascia is so limber and open. I can stretch it deeper. I can access deeper layers because your body's not so busy digesting the heavy duty physical foods. So it can actually metabolize the gunks or the less healthy cells and the debris that's in your soft tissue so that everything flows better. And finally, this is because your audience is ready for some far out conversations. I had an experience during darkroom with my own fascia that was quite profound. We had this one meditation in our darkroom. We spent 9 days in complete darkness. So it was like quite deep into it. Like, I think it was the 7th day out of the 9 days of darkness. So the retreat is 11 days and we have 9 days in darkness. So the 7th day in darkness, there was a meditation that was like building up on top of the previous meditation. So the field was already very, very strong. And we had this guided meditation where all of us journeyed back to the remembrance of who and what we were in that moment of individuation from source. When our consciousness wanted to experience what it's like to pretend to individuate ourselves from source and then to express ourselves in these different incarnations, to actually go into that state of remembering what it felt like and that intention, that curiosity to allow all that is to experience itself as individuations of consciousness. Balls was what I experienced. It was like these portals. So I journeyed into that remembrance and I journeyed into this remembrance of who and what I am and was as this individuation point, which felt like a portal that I sat in. And in sitting in this portal, I experienced this. I'm working on the words. It was a white flame that was incinerating anything that was all the gunk, all the BS, all the lies, all the stress and the tension that I was holding from this lifetime. And I saw this individuation point as a portal that was like a Ferris wheel, a multidimensional Ferris wheel, expressing itself into different incarnations, one of which was this lifetime as Edith Chan, who's a mom, who's a Chinese medicine doctor, and all the identities associated with this lifetime. And in sitting in that portal with the sacred white flame, this flame just kept incinerating all the things that were the false identities that we pick up from the lifetime. And I saw that all this gunk just got poofed, basically, incinerated, disappeared. And I saw while sitting in that portal that all these things we're calling intuition, expanded possibilities, telepathy, all these expansive human possibilities that we has audience like this, so curious, right? We love to nerd out on this stuff. While sitting in that portal, it was like this giggling of delight. Like, we've all already done all of this before. It's just that we had temporary amnesia and we're kicking back into the remembrance. So there is no need to be grasping and seeking at all of these skills as if they're outside of us. It's actually just a relaxing back into the remembrance that we've already all lived in different expressions of our essence, where we've already experienced telepathy, remote viewing, telekinesis, expanded perceptions. Just like relax back into the remembrance of it. So I'm sitting in this portal, getting just like cooked in the most blissful way by this sacred white flame, remembering all this stuff. Then the meditation starts wrapping up and I journeyed back, and there was a conscious recalibration back into the physical density form, into the world of time and space. And I went back to my room and just really needed to sleep. It was such a profound recalibration. The next morning I woke up and I did some yoga stretches. And I was able to get to an almost complete splits, both directions. I was able to get down into pigeon pose all the way to the ground completely flat. I was able to do side bends and reach my foot, all these things. These are all things that since having children, which is the last 11 years, I haven't been able to do. And with that meditation of remembering the true essence of who we are and dropping all the false identities that we don't need to hang on to anymore, the next morning, my fascia just all opened up. So how much of the gunk that we're holding in our fascia requires a lot of physical working with? And how much of it can be something that we can work with maybe upstream from the physical reality and then come back through. I still needed to do some yoga stretches and a little bit of self-massage to work out the last few percent of it. But it just all locked into place in this beautiful way from the experience of remembering our true essence. So I hope that this is sharing this little story is kicking our friends that are listening to this podcast into the direct remembering of something deep within their essence, that maybe there's a relaxing back to who and what we really are that will tap us back into this state very naturally, peacefully, and joyfully.
I really appreciate all of those details, and I feel lucky that you're still kind of integrating and we get it kind of fresh. You make me want to try dark retreats, with everything that you're describing seems like such a transcendental meditation, but it's such a prolonged experience. You're tripping. I use that word in such a lovely way. You're tripping on the medicine of the ancients when you're fasting and you're in darkness and you're allowing everything to kind of relax and expand. I mean, it's great wisdom that you just shared, and I'm sure everybody's going to kind of eat that up, and it's beautiful how it relates to so many things we talk about. I am curious about the personal practice that you have, because the culture is struggling right now. We are in chaos. In all chaos, there is opportunity. And I've been struggling with how to show up bravely as a leader and an educator and kind of just giggle and see the harmony within the chaos. And I recently came across one of your podcasts where you talked about sitting on this throne with the earth. You were at another retreat. So I'm curious, how often do you do these night retreats? Where did you start? And also, how do these retreats make you reflect on the chaos of the world at large?
Well, I feel like I don't do retreats enough because there's just running 2 businesses, homeschooling 2 kids, and just being a mom. And yeah, I wish I could do these retreats more. The story about sitting in this carved stone, it was called the Sillon de Inca on an island called Amantani in Lake Titicaca. That was a whole 11 years ago. It's just within the span of a 1 to 2 hour podcast. Yeah, I have a lot of stories to pack in, but these are stories that transpired over many, many years. So I wish I could go into retreat a lot more often than I actually do. What was your question? It was about,
I guess the first easy question is how many, do you go once a year to a darkroom experience, 11 days of fasting? Do you do that once a year?
No, actually, this is only my second time. I wish I had gone more often, but the last time I went was in 2013. And when I came back from that retreat in 2013, I instantly became so sensitive to energies. And now I have practices to calibrate it so it's not so loud. But when I came back from the 2013 retreat, I couldn't tolerate living in the city, and I had to move to the countryside almost instantly after I came back to San Francisco, because my intuitive sensibilities got so heightened that I was able to see, sense, feel, know the moods and thoughts of my neighbors in the building, and it was cacophonous and too loud, and I couldn't tolerate it. So when I was in my Chinese medicine practice, I'm working one-on-one under the context of this person is here to treat a medical condition. They might have physical pain. They might have some blocked energies in their organs. And it was very helpful to sense into very quickly. But at night, I needed to rest and I couldn't because I hadn't learned how to turn it on and off yet. So that was in 2013. And as soon as I moved to the countryside, my boys started visiting in my dreams and meditations and sharing about this new generation of children that are going to show the world a new set of possibilities of what it's like to be a human. And could I please conceive him and all this stuff? So then that kicked me into life of motherhood, pregnancy and motherhood and exploring natural birth, home birth, co-sleeping, nursing two babies. They both nurse until they turned 5. The first one 4.5, the second one until she was 5. So I've been either pregnant or nursing for the last decade. So it was only very recently. I'm so grateful. This very last darkroom retreat with Jasmuheen was really the first season that I was able to get away with the children. Most of the fun stories of going away to retreats and so on, I'm grateful to say I accumulated many of them before children. And with the children, it's a different set of mystical experiences because you snuggle the children at bedtime and they're so delightful and magical. You know, sometimes I read them a bedtime stories, but most of the time they're telling me bedtime stories. They're telling me magical stories of what they remember from before their incarnations. And then we fall asleep together and we might do out-of-body travel journeying, flying through the cosmos together. So I've had a number of fun experiences with the children, but it's not the same as going away to a 11-day dark retreat. That was really special that I got to do that this past month.
I'm so happy to hear that. I feel so honored that I get you fresh out of, the retreat. And
I would say though, what motherhood has trained me is that there's always like, Mama, I need this, I need that, I need that. It's like, okay, well, prior to having children, I'd had enough years of meditative practice under my belt. So I would say to all the moms and dads out there, especially if you have young ones, I'd say that's the most advanced consciousness, spirituality, metaphysical practice that I've experienced is having young children like, la, 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 constantly being hyper vigilant and not letting that distract and disjoint your energy field to actually be able to just say, in one breath, I can get coherent. Can I challenge myself to just tap right back in at any moment in just one breath, get coherent again? And that's the gift that I've experienced with motherhood is that some days there's just not time to meditate for 45 minutes or an hour, but I always can have one breath. And if I don't get there in one breath, can I get there in 3 breaths? So that's the practice I have.
That's beautiful. Thank you for saying that. I respect so much some of the stories that you've shared online. And I definitely am trying to get to a point with this one question. So forgive me if I tried a few times. I think that you are connected to your ancient soul, and your ancient soul allows you to kind of giggle at like where most of us lose energy. We stress out of things that are outside of our control. And I would love for you to share in like maybe any story that comes to mind about how you relate to the world at large, and maybe even just what we are perceiving as bad or chaotic is maybe part of this other harmonious field. And I kind of started crying when you were on Alex Zek's podcast and you were talking about being pregnant and you hiked this mountain in Lake Titicaca and you sat on the throne and you're talking about how Earth, I'm not going to ruin the story. I would love for you to share it because it was such a visceral weaving of another way to look at the human experience.
Yeah, I would love to share the story, and forgive me if I tear up too, because every time I share the stories, I'm reliving of it. Yeah, so when my boy, who is now 10 and a half, almost 11, when he was in my belly, I was about 7.5 months pregnant. I felt really called to go to Peru, and so we signed up for this. I believe it was a 10-day guided tour, of which there was about 3 days spent on Lake Titicaca. And supposedly there was a silent meditation portion, those 3 days on Lake Titicaca in the sacred energy to do the meditation. But the meditation instructor was very, very kind, but nobody really enjoyed his meditation. So we all kind of played hooky from the meditation. We're like, this is such a special place. We'll keep our agreement to be silent, but everybody just wanted to like roam around the island and check things out and explore. The one part that was really awesome was that once a day, the tour guide and the meditation teacher would take us to one of the special sites on Amantani. It was the island is called Amantani. There's a bunch of sacred sites, and they brought us on this particular day to a place called the Sillon de Inca, the Inca seat. And it's this giant rock that's carved almost like a throne. And that day, I had been playing hooky from the meditations. And so we were just roaming around the island, and I was getting very pregnant. And so my belly and my pelvis and my hips was like kind of sore from all the adventures I'd been on. So when we were hiking to the Sillon de Inca place, the tour guide took pity on me. It was like, it's rocky and the trails and the terrain and it's high altitude. And I tuned into my body and didn't feel comfortable to take the coca leaves that everybody was taking to deal with the high altitude. So I'm huffing and puffing, but I'm having a great time. Just very pregnant, huffing and puffing, not in a meditative state whatsoever. The tour guide looks at me and says, here, with his hand gesture, and he like helps me to get through those last few steps to get to the Sillon de Inca. And everybody's honoring our agreement for the 3 days of silence and meditative state. So we're staying silent. And the meditation teacher says, this is called the Sillon de Inca. It faces the sunset and it's beautiful at this hour. Just before sunset, we wanted to bring you here to feel the energies. And we don't really know what this thing was for, except it seems like a great place to meditate. The beautiful scene, watching the sunset right along the beach, and the energy was so beautiful there. So they said, yeah, go ahead and jump into the lake and swim and just explore. And just when the sun sets in a couple of hours, we'll hike back to the guest house. So he says this, and all this stuff started happening. I don't know exactly how I somehow got my butt onto the seat. I'm not conscious of that memory because the visionary state just kicked in very fast as soon as I even touched the rock. I'm sitting on this rock, and is mandalas, and patterns, mandalas, brr, 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 brr. And I felt the mandalas encoding my column of light from bottom to top to bottom, brr, codes upon codes upon codes. Then I started seeing faces upon faces upon faces upon faces upon faces. And somehow I knew that these were the teachers, the seers, the healers, all the carriers of sacred codes, all these beautiful beings that had sat on that rock in that energy and had that same experience, that somehow I was brought into this incredible blessing of tuning into the same channel that they were tuned into. And I recognized their faces as somehow familiar. And I knew that they had all sat on that chair, and the tears just started coming because just that alone was so beautiful. And then after seeing all of their faces, and it was faces across millennia, you know, all different generations and different cycles of time. And then Pachamama shows up, and the tears just started gushing because it was an instant like reunion with her. And the love was so potent that I had never experienced this kind of pure motherly love like this. And in the face of that love, I felt all the shame and guilt instantly. I instantly apologized for all the unconscious ways that we live in this world, with all the pillaging of resources, the pollutions, the very unconscious ways that we not even aware that Pachamama or Gaia or whatever you call her, she doesn't care what you call her, that she's a profound sentience. And the energy that she gave me was so unconditionally loving. Forgiveness isn't even the right word. It's just like there's nothing to apologize for, nothing to forgive, was the energy that she gave me. And I shared with her, I said, look at all the ways in which we pollute and pillage, and we're not conscious, and we rob the resources of this planet in such an unconscious way. And all of this. I showed her images of all the crap, all the pollution, the oil spills, the trash piles in the Pacific, all the crap that we do, the toxic spraying of our soils and depleting our soils and not knowing how to work with the soils of the earth and all these things. I showed her all these images and she just smiled and loved me. And the image she sent back to me was just like when we have a little baby that is growing up and when they're in toddlerhood. And you know how they make the biggest mess and it's so cute when they're just first like trying to like eat with a spoon and none of it makes it in. It just goes all the spilling onto their bib and it's all over the floor. And when you're a mother or father and auntie with a cute toddler, like learning to locomote themselves to eat for the first time is so freaking cute that you want to take pictures of it. And it's so precious because you know that this is such a temporary moment. Soon they're going to be a teenager. One day they're going to be all grown up and you will just hold so sacred these special memories when they're a little cute toddler and making a big mess. And that's what she said to me. She said, "Oh my goodness, honey, you guys are growing up perfectly." I said, "But what about all the mess that we make? We have to clean up." And she said, "You will. You will. You will. You are growing up perfectly. When you grow up to that point, you will naturally clean everything up. You are already growing up so fast." And that she just went into, "I love you so much. I love you. 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 I love you." And that the love was just like almost unbearable amounts of love that she poured through me. And I realized in hindsight that she was teaching me about motherhood too. You know, my own earth biological mother did the very best she could, but this potency of motherly love I had never experienced. And so it calibrated me to a whole other order of magnitude of possibility of the kind of love that I could allow to flow through me. Yeah. And then she shared, she said, "You know what? You know, all those times you teach Qigong and meditation classes, and you have a bunch of friends come together and you drop into your heart and you send me your love, or you feel your feet and you root into the earth. You think that's just a visualization practice?" She said, "When you remember me like that and you send your balls of love and light through your root into the earth, through your feet into the earth, and you reach into my heart and you connect with me like this," she said, "I live for those moments. It's not just a visualization, you know. That's the nourishment that I live for, that you guys remember me like this." And then she showed me all these images, you know, in response to me sending her images of all the polluting and all the pillaging of the earth. She says, "You know, those times when you just caress a rock or you just lay down on the grass and you merge with me, the times that you hug a tree, the times that you sit in nature and just take in all the beauty, those are the moments I live for, where you return to my embrace, you know." So she just said, "I love you, I 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 love you so much, I love you, I love you." And she showed me images of how quickly we are already growing up. And the tears was just like avalanches of tears. And I thought that was the most profound 5 minutes of my life. And at some point I thought, wait a minute, there's a bunch of other people on this tour and in this retreat. They might want to experience this rock too. I better get my butt off of it. So I came back to the physicality, and I opened my eyes and the sun had already set and everyone was packed up and starting to like get ready to walk back to the guest house. So I guess it had been an hour or 2 hours. I don't know how long I was on there. I thought it was just 5 minutes. Yeah. And my partner Dave had a towel. He saw what was going on. He had a towel, so he came and gave me a towel, wiped it down, and that experience, that energy, that connection with Pachamama stayed with me ever since. And every time I need some guidance about parenthood, I tune in and I connect with her, and she's the world's best parenting coach, I have to say. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for taking me on that journey. Like, I think that's the most healing frame of mind for like all of the worry and confusion and the fear that's being propagated. Like from that frame, we're just growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, she was so absolutely certain that we were growing up perfectly. There was no room for any doubts or worries. It's like, well, right now she's not arguing with reality. Right now, much of mankind is in the toddler phase, transitioning into teenagehood and so on. So at the perfect time, we will take the right action that is based on our evolution and development. And she's not busy wasting her energy arguing with reality. She's just loving us for exactly where we are. And she's absolutely confident that we will grow and evolve perfectly, beautifully. And I mean, that was in 2014. And I do have to say, I feel that we are growing up perfectly. And a lot of the chaotic, messy things that we're seeing are just part of the natural detox process that I think we're all going through. And as you know, working with people healing on many different levels, the detox process can look messy. But if we are able to still ourselves, to not get overly fixated on the superficial appearance of things. And this is why the intuition training, if we want to use that word, is so potent, because we can tune into not the superficial appearance, but the underlying energetics at play. In Chinese medicine, that's a huge part of our training. We look at the pattern of symptoms, but then we check the pulse, we scan the energy, we look at the tongue, and we look at the underlying energy pattern. And that gives us a really awesome, full depth and breadth of what's really going on. And we can see with optimism if someone's having different superficial symptoms, but their underlying energy patterns is really strong and stable and good. You can see that it's actually just a temporary detox process. And that's what I'm seeing with mankind. We're clearing out some gunk so that we can make space for the beauty and blessings that wants so badly to take hold in mankind right now.
What is your advice for the sensitive people out there that maybe are picking up on too much information during this detox of our culture? I love that word. That's such a good repair word.
Yeah. It's a detox and a recalibration, So most symptoms in our human physiology are intelligent efforts to correct and find, I don't want to say homeostasis, homeodynamics, like an intelligent balancing, right? So recalibration is a really good way to understand when you have symptoms, your system's just recalibrating.
For the sensitives.
Yeah, for
want to
this,
dial it down.
This is a profound conversation because ultimately everything in life is about energy. When we incarnate, we're given a certain quantity of energy that we can work with and create into a beautiful life.
Shen.
What's that?
Is that called Shen? Is that the word for it?
Yeah, well, in Chinese medicine, we have many different terms for like Shen and Po, many different spiritual energies and physical energies. There's like a whole set of vocabulary around that. The Shen is one of them. Yeah. So you can say that all of life is just an energy game. If you learn to master your energy, you master your life. So it begs the question, at any juncture in your life, it always serves us to ask the question, in this situation, what is the wisest use of my energy? That question will never lead you astray. Whenever you're like, I don't know what to do. Okay, what is the wisest use of my energy in this situation? And with regards to all the tumultuousness happening in the world, it's up to each of us to attune to the energetics at play, to ask ourselves, is it worth my energy to get hooked into this drama? Is this my business to get entangled into, or is it somebody else's business? And if I get entangled into it, is it maybe draining energy from things that actually matters way more. So this is why things like digital detox is so profound and is so helpful for just managing our energies and ultimately helpful for awakening high intuitive functions also, because many of us, our circuitry is overstimulated. So ultimately, as a protective mechanism, it gets scarred up and dulled down. So we're hyper-stimulated by all the media and all the sounds and so many different senses that gets hyper-stimulated that we don't have the opportunity to awaken our higher intuitive function and our subtler sensitivities that allows us to actually have more precise GPS for navigating our lives, right? So it's on us to manage our own energy. And there's different practices that we can do to center ourselves and then to create a toroidal field around us that is precisely programmed so that it alchemizes the different energies that are out there so that anything that can come into our field is pre-filtered and buffered in a certain way so that you can encode it in a meditative state. You can encode this layer of alchemy around your energy field with precise intentions, such as anything that comes into my life only comes in for my highest good, or things like anything that any energies I interact with is for my highest good, for their highest good, and for the highest good of all of mankind. You can program these things into my energy field. Anything that is not for my highest good, it will just slide right off and doesn't have to come into my field. So I would suggest practices like this, where you consciously program your energy with a buffering layer that alchemizes with some of the not so coherent, kind of discordant energies out there so that you're not so easily influenced by that. And this is the practice that I've been in since 2013 when all my sensitivities got awakened so heightened and I couldn't tolerate being in the city anymore. Now I'm able to tolerate in this being able to program it so that I can keep my sensitivities alive when it's useful, but not be so like rocked off my center so easily by the different discordant energies out there. So it's really just a practice of energy mastery. And I get that in the early stages, it's a lot to handle. And eventually it just comes with the territory. Those of us that are more attuned and aware, we really need practices like this to safeguard our own energies so that we can use our energies as wisely as possible towards the things that truly matter in life.
For people that are just starting to activate their gifts and it's like a little uncomfortable for them, my advice often is like wearing a hat or wearing a scarf or wearing something that you could shield a little bit of your forehead and your ears to kind of slow down the vibrations. Wearing a big heavy jacket always kind of helps me feel grounded and kind of protected from any extra stimulation on my skin or from light. Is there anything that you recommend to people that are, maybe they did their first Qigong practice and they kind of exploded and they're still trying to integrate and they found us, they're watching this podcast and they're like, okay, please help me. What would be your guiding light for people like that?
Yeah, I love all of that you shared. There's so many great tools and everybody will need to find their own way, but sometimes I'll just turn on sacred music and put on headphones, especially when I'm traveling, making sure and I envision my bubble of light being programmed by the frequencies of the sacred music so that all the other things like on the bus ride, on the airplane ride, I'm cocooned from all of that. So a huge part of it is programming ourselves to be radiating energy instead of absorbing energy. So directionally, feel that your heart center especially is like an infinite fountain of love and beauty and peace and blessings. So allow the blessings to overflow out from your heart and become the dominating energy in your field. And you can listen to sacred music to amplify that field and be very conscious that you choose not to absorb other people's energies if it's not the best energetic hygienes for you. And visualize your energy bubble having a really solid buffer layer around it. not because you're afraid of anything, but just simply for energy hygiene. It's just more clean this way to live life in this way where we keep our energy bubbles nice and coherent. So sacred energy, sacred music, essential oils, I find really helpful to shift the energies. I have little songs and mantras that I sing to myself in my own mind. And also simple things like making sure you're getting really good sleep, really good rest.
If you don't mind, I would kind of like to say it's like both of us are looking at this as, I'm like trying to simplify the language. When I think of our electromagnetic field, that toroid field around us, and we can code it with language, and then we can kind of empower it with taking care of our body tension, making our body feel fluid and balanced, and then dropping our breath rate. And then like essential oils, what that does is, in my world, it invites in a pocket of like angelic frequency in whatever chaos you're around. Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, essential oils, it's like, no, if you're on a bus or you're on a plane and there's a crying baby next to you and this person smells a little funny, sometimes that essential oil is enough to kind of set off a little frequency bomb that lets you recalibrate. So yes, food, like I love eating a tangerine on a plane, and I'll bring one for my neighbor on each side of me if I sit in the middle or whatever. And it's like an excuse. Yeah, that tangerine oil in the peel, it doesn't like bother anyone. It's like such a happy scent. But these are tools that you gain over so much time. And I just wanted to hit a number of them. Is there anything that we missed? I have one more question for you after this.
Yeah. And I would say just consider that most of us could do a better job managing our time and energy, right? So if we weren't hyperstimulated by different stimuli, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of stuff we could just say no to so that when it really matters, you have a more coherent baseline to meet the challenges in life. So there are some situations where you may not have much of a choice. You are just in that discordant energy. At least enter into that discordant energy with your best self, not already overstimulated by all kinds of stuff that you could have just said no to before. Does that make sense? So I guess looking more holistically at what you say yes to, what you say no to is a profound practice too. So you safeguard your energy 80, 90% of the time when you have the choice, and those 10% of the time when you just have to encounter those discordant energies. For example, you need to be on the bus to travel to some beautiful place and the bus is kind of funky, or you need to go to a hospital with all the hospital energies because you want to be with a loved one. Bring your very best self to that situation, not already burnt out and worn out by the other previous situations. Get really good at saying no to the things that don't really matter so that you can really say yes to the things that truly matter in your life. That would be maybe my number one advice for that.
That's such good advice too for like the athletes and artists that are my clients, that when you're going up on stage performance day, if you're just on your phone and you're doom scrolling, you're not charging your energy up, you're going to greet that big momentous moment with half power. Yes. So that applies with every single choice we make.
Yeah, I would say meeting life as if you're a professional athlete or professional musician, I think that is a beautiful orientation for all of us, even if you're not an athlete or professional musician. Like this is your whole life is a sacred, beautiful gift that at the end of this life, when it's your time, you've completed the work and you cross over to the other side and you get your life review. Consider it from that perspective. Did you live your life in such a way that when you look back during your life review, it will just be a beautiful, delightful thing for you to re-witness from the other side?
So my company's name is Musical Breathwork, and it's because I believe that life is meant to be like a musical. So I'm curious, what makes your life like a musical these days?
Wow, what a good question. What makes my life a musical? Well, there is also on a personal level some detox happening with like family dynamics and interpersonal relationships. So if I look at it from the near-death experience life review perspective, it sure is rich and interesting and not boring. And then in terms of everything that all of mankind is going through sociopolitically, so many rapid changes, our relationship with what is a biological human and what is artificial intelligence, and the interface of these different sentiences and it's just such an exciting, full spectrum time to be alive. Meanwhile, I feel so blessed. Like I'm pinching myself because this sure is an amazing dream that I'm living right now where 5 years ago, my magical little boy said, I want to learn how to do blindfold vision. And so we met Godan, who is now a dear, dear friend and my collaborator with our Luminous Kids Blindfold Vision program. And then we became friends. And now we are offering these classes. We have hundreds and hundreds of families on our wait list that are so excited to experience these gifts together. And for me to be able to be a conduit for this work to move into the world, and the full spectrum experience of seeing all these children activate and light up, and the magical possibilities that is just the dominating frequency of my life right now. Yeah, to be able to do work that is so rich and beautiful and so nourishing and so rewarding is like a full spectrum experience. I have a song. Can I share a song? It's a little bit
Yeah,
call and
absolutely.
response. This song is inspired by a song that Jasmine likes to sing about prana, because when we're in that meditative state, we are nourished by prana from the inside out, and so she calls it source feeding or pranic nourishment. There's different terms for this. So she has a song about like prana in the morning, prana every day. Anyway, so she inspired me to come up with a song with the blindfold vision. So it's call and response. And I know you're super musical. I'm not a professional musician, but so bear with me. It goes something like this. Blindfold vision.
Blindfold vision
is a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
Natural superpower we can all activate.
A natural superpower we can all activate.
Blindfold vision.
Blindfold vision
brings me lots of joy.
Brings me lots of joy.
The secret to success is to breathe, have fun, and play.
I love that so much. The secret to success is to breathe, laugh, and play.
Yay! And we end with a yay! So that's our new anthem for our blindfold vision classes for not just kids, but for our adult class. We're going to be singing this song as our little like warm-up routine.
That's beautiful.
And I realized that it's like actually with all of life. Let's say you're starting a business. Like starting a business is a lot of fun, a natural superpower we can all activate. Starting a business brings me lots of joy. The secret to success is to breathe, have fun, and play. I mean, it will never go wrong, this song. So you can substitute the blindfold vision part for whatever activity that you're wanting to focus your energies on. Being an athlete, being a mom, being an entrepreneur, being an awesome neighbor in the community, whatever it is that you want to focus your energy, just have fun with your life. The secret to success is to breathe, have fun, and play.
Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your wisdom. It's been a real privilege. I said that I had no more questions, but I lied. I have one more. For people who watch this and you just blew their brain, is there a book or documentary that you would advise them to check out?
There are two answers that are coming to me, because the most profound experiences that I've had have been the direct experience and not watching a movie or reading a book or, so just before we hit record, something that we were sharing off camera was that your audience is highly intelligent, and that you guys will probably enjoy different books and documentaries and so on, and the research and the science behind all these expansive possibilities. And at the same time, I want to invite everybody to consider that the most epic book or movie is already within you. And maybe in this world of hyperstimulation, maybe the book or movie that we need is to actually do a little bit of digital detox and spend a lot more time in silent stillness to watch the movies and read the books that are actually in the inner planes. So I have recommendations, but all the recommendations I'm thinking of Like the Superhuman documentary was the one that got my boy interested in blindfold vision. So I would recommend that. But all these, I have hundreds of books I could recommend, but all of them, when I'm tuning in right now, they just feel like they pale in comparison to the richness, the depth, and the beauty that is already inside each and every one of us. So I suggest silent stillness, meditation, time in nature, and listen within for the most epic, awesome documentary and books that are available within you.
My mission that I set out before I started this company 7 years ago was to bring silence and stillness back to the world. So you just kind of like hit such a good note. It's like perfect. That's exactly the good advice. Thank you so much for this time. It was a great trance we got in, and you really locked in with the lawnmower guy in the back. I really appreciate how we kind of calibrated and held space. It's been a true honor, Dr. Edith. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we call this good?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Brooke, for the frequencies that you emanate into the world. It really feels like we came from a similar region of the individuation from source, and that we are doing work that so beautifully complement one another. And I just really want to honor and appreciate you for the potency, the power, the beauty, the goodness that you're bringing into the world. And to your audience for being the types of people that are attuned to this kind of conversation and all the ways that you're going to radiate this consciousness into your community. So thank you to Brooke. Thank you to your team. Thank you to this amazing community that you've built of human pioneers that are here to express a far more beautiful possibility of what it is to be a human being.
Thanks for pioneering such a nice path that we can all resonate off of. We're the 100 monkeys you've been looking for sure. Yes. Over the age of 14.
Yes.
Thank you so much.